Captain Elias Vance stood in the doorway of his small cabin aboard the Deep Space Ark Sanctuary and looked at the bed one last time. It was simple, narrow, and bolted to the floor so it would not drift in zero gravity. The blanket was gray, thin, and folded carefully at the foot. He had left a clear space on one side, smooth and empty, as if someone else truly belonged there. He did not know why his hands had shaken while making it. Outside his door, the ship hummed with quiet energy. The sanctuary was old, older than most of the people who lived on it, and far older than the stars they passed. It had been built when humans still believed they could fix everything. Now it carried what was left of them across a galaxy that had already decided their story was almost over. Elias took a slow breath and straightened his uniform. The fabric was worn at the edges, the human emblem on his chest faded from years of washing. Still, he wore it with care. He always did. A soft tone sounded at the door. He tapped the control panel and the door slid open. Ambassador Kathira stood in the hallway, tall and still, her slender form glowing with soft bands of blue light that ran across her skin like moving stars. Her species did not wear clothes the way humans did. Their skin itself shifted colors and patterns, showing mood and intent. Right now her light was calm but curious. "Captain Vance," she said, her voice smooth and gentle, shaped by a translator field that hummed quietly between them. "You requested a private meeting." "Yes," Elias replied. "Thank you for coming." She stepped inside, her movements light, almost floating even under the ship's gravity. Her eyes, large and dark, swept across the room. It was small. A desk, a wall screen, a single chair, and the bed. That was all. Her gaze stopped at the bed. She tilted her head slightly. The glow on her skin shifted to a soft gold. "You prepared a shared rest space," she said. Elias nodded. "I did." There was a long silence. On Kathira's world, sharing a resting place was not a sign of romance or comfort. It was something far deeper. It was an old tradition that meant trust, safety, and a promise not to harm. Entire treaties between species had begun with the simple act of two beings choosing to rest in the same space, unguarded. Elias knew this. That was why he had done it. Kathira stepped closer to the bed, careful, as if it might disappear if she moved too fast. She reached out and touched the edge of the blanket with long, delicate fingers. "Are you sure?" she asked. Her light dimmed slightly, a sign of serious thought. Elias swallowed. "I am." She looked at him now, really looked at him, at the tired lines around his eyes. At the way he stood straight even though his shoulders carried more weight than one person should ever bear. "You carry the voice of your entire species," she said softly. "You understand what this means." "I do," Elias replied, "and I understand what it risks." Kathira stepped back, her glow shifting again, this time to a slow, steady white. She lifted one hand and touched a small device on her wrist. A low hum filled the air. "The moment has already been shared," she said. "The galaxy is watching." Elias' heart skipped. "You activated a broadcast?" he asked. "Yes," she answered. "This act cannot be private, not for what it represents." The walls of the cabin seemed to close in around him. Somewhere far beyond the metal skin of the sanctuary, billions of eyes from countless worlds were now focused on this small, quiet room. A human and an alien, a bed, an empty space. Elias walked to the side of the bed and sat down slowly. The frame creaked under his weight. "We don't have much left," he said. "You know that, our colonies are gone, our worlds are dust. The sanctuary carries fewer than 50,000 humans now. That used to be the population of a single city." Kathira did not interrupt. Her glow softened, showing deep attention. "We used to be everywhere," Elias continued. "We built, explored, messed things up, fixed them, and then messed them up again. We weren't perfect. We were never perfect. But we always believed tomorrow could be better than today." He looked at his hands. They were scarred. Old burns, old cuts, memories of repairs and battles and long nights keeping broken systems alive. "Now the galaxy looks at us like we're a sad story that's almost finished," he said. "A lesson in what not to become." Kathira stepped closer. "Many see you as brave," she said. "Some see you as dangerous, some see you as already gone." Elias gave a small, tired smile. "Yeah, that sounds about right." He patted the empty space beside him on the bed. "We don't want to disappear alone," he said. "If we're going to fade, we want someone to remember we were here, not as a warning, not as a mistake, but as people who tried." Kathira's glow shifted to a deep, warm blue. It was the color her species used for respect. "You choose connection over survival," she said. "That is rare." She hesitated for only a moment before sitting down beside him, careful to leave a small space between them. The bed dipped slightly under her weight. The broadcast signal pulsed silently. Across the galaxy, reactions spread like a storm. On the crystal worlds of the Thal, elders whispered in shock. On the warforges of the Kren, generals paused their planning. On distant ocean planets, beings who had never heard a human voice leaned closer to their screens. This was not a threat, not a demand. It was an invitation. Kathira folded her legs beneath her in a way that looked almost human. "Your species is known for fire," she said, "for building engines that burn stars and ships that cross the dark faster than light, yet this is what you choose to show the galaxy." Elias nodded. "We've tried being loud, we've tried being strong, we've tried being scary, none of it saved us." He looked up at her. "So now we're trying something else." They sat in silence for a long moment. The sanctuary drifted through a field of distant starlight. The glow from a nearby nebula painted soft colors across the cabin walls. Kathira spoke again. "When my people first reached the wider galaxy, we believed trust was weakness. We believed only power kept you alive." "And now?" Elias asked. "And now," she said, "I am sitting in the resting place of a species the galaxy expects to vanish, and I feel safer than I ever have in a council chamber filled with fleets." Elias let out a quiet breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "You don't know how much that means to us," he said. Kathira lifted her wrist again. The broadcast expanded. Her voice carried across stars. "Let it be known," she said, "that humanity has made space, not for conquest, not for control, but for others to stand beside them unguarded." The response was not immediate. The galaxy was too large, too scattered, but slowly signals began to return. Questions, curiosity, doubt, hope. On the bridge of the sanctuary, human officers watched their screens fill with messages from species they had never spoken to before. Some were cautious, some were angry, some simply said, "We see you." Elias felt his chest tighten. Kathira stood, her glow brightening. "This will change things," she said. "You cannot take it back." "I know," Elias replied. "We don't want to." She paused at the door and looked back at the bed, at the empty space that still waited. "Your species may be small now," she said, "but today you became very loud in a different way." The door slid shut behind her. Elias remained seated for a long time. He thought of Earth, of blue skies and oceans he had only seen in old recordings. He thought of children growing up on metal decks instead of grass. He thought of stories humans told each other to remember who they were. He lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was deciding what to do with them. For the first time in a long while, humanity was not running. They were waiting. And they had made space. The lights in the main hall of the sanctuary dimmed as the ship slowed its drift. Outside the wide viewing windows, the stars stretched into long silver lines, then settled into still points of light. The ship had arrived. Captain Elias Vance stood near the front of the chamber, his hands folded behind his back. The room was larger than his small cabin, but it still felt too small for what was about to happen. Rows of seats curved around a raised platform in the center. Above it, a ring of floating screens glowed softly, each one connected to a different part of the galaxy. This was the place where voices from 100 species could speak at once. This was the place where decisions were made that changed worlds. Kathira stood beside him. Her skin glowed a steady, calm blue, but Elias could tell she was focused. Her people did not show fear the way humans did, but the slight slowing of her light told him she was careful. The broadcast from his cabin had spread faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Council had responded within hours. Now the sanctuary was connected to the largest meeting the galaxy could create without moving a single ship. A soft tone filled the hall. The screens brightened. One by one, shapes and faces appeared. Some were tall and thin. Others were wide and heavy. Some looked almost human. Others looked like living shadows or glowing clouds. The galaxy had many forms of life, and tonight many of them were watching him. Elias took a slow breath. Kathira stepped forward. "Members of the council," she said, her voice carried and shaped by the translator field. "We are here to speak of what was shown." A low sound moved through the screens, murmurs, signals, colors shifting. A large, stone-like figure appeared on one screen. Its body was made of layered crystal and dark rock, and its eyes glowed like deep red coals. "Ambassador Kathira," it said, "and Captain of Humanity, you performed a sacred act without warning. You forced meaning onto the galaxy." Elias stepped forward. "We didn't force anything," he said. "We offered it." Another screen brightened. A tall, thin being made of light and shadow leaned closer. "Your species is nearly gone," it said. "Why pretend you still matter?" The words were not cruel. They were simple, honest. Elias felt them hit like a heavy weight in his chest. He looked at Kathira. She gave a small nod. He stepped onto the center platform. "My name is Elias Vance," he said. "I'm not important. I'm just a man who was born on a ship instead of a planet." The room grew quiet. "I've never seen a real sky without metal between me and it," he continued. "I've never walked on real dirt. I've never felt rain." Some of the screens flickered as beings adjusted their focus. "But my parents did," he said, "and their parents before them. Humans didn't start in the stars. We started on the ground, looking up, wondering what was out there." The stone-like being shifted slightly. "We know your history," it said. "You burned worlds, you changed systems, you brought chaos." Elias nodded. "We did," he said. "We also built homes. We saved people who weren't like us. We crossed empty space just to say hello." He paused. "We weren't good or bad, we were human." Kathira stepped forward beside him. "The act you witnessed," she said, "was not about power, it was about choice. Humanity chose to be seen as they are, not as they were feared." A new screen came alive. This one showed a being that looked like a floating ring of liquid light. "The galaxy is facing something far greater than your story," it said. "There is a threat moving through space. Entire systems go silent. Entire species vanish. We are preparing to leave those regions behind." Elias felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "How many?" he asked. The ring of light pulsed. "More than you can count," it said, "and more than you can save." Kathira's glow dimmed slightly. "Then why are we here?" she asked. "Because," the being said, "your species lives on the edge of what we plan to abandon." The words settled like dust. Elias understood now. They were not being invited to join the plan. They were being warned. "If we stay," Elias said slowly, "we die." "Yes," the ring replied. "And if we leave," Elias asked. "You may live," it said, "somewhere else if you are fast enough." Elias looked out at the screens. "How many of you are leaving?" he asked. "Most of them." He could see it in the silence, in the way their lights and colors shifted. Kathira spoke softly. "And those who cannot move fast enough, the small, the weak, the ones with no fleets." "They will be forgotten," the stone being said. The word hit Elias harder than anything else. Forgotten, he stepped back from the platform and looked at Kathira. She understood. She turned to the council. "Humanity does not move fast," she said. "They build slowly, they stay, they remember." The ring of light pulsed again. "That will not stop what is coming." Elias felt something rise inside him. Not anger, not fear, stubbornness. "We know," he said. "We've never been the biggest or the strongest for long, but we've always been the ones who stay behind when everyone else runs." A screen flared. A sharp, mechanical voice spoke. "That is foolish." "Maybe," Elias said, "but it's who we are." He took a breath. "If you're leaving," he said, "then give us what you don't want to carry." The council grew still. "Give us your stories," Elias continued. "Your records, your memories, your names. Let us hold them." The ring of light shifted in a pattern that showed confusion. "You cannot protect them," it said. "No," Elias agreed, "but we can remember them." Kathira stepped closer to him. "Human systems are small," she said, "but they are built for care, not speed. Their networks are not made for command. They are made for connection." The stone being leaned forward. "You would become a vault," it said, "a living archive." "Yes," Elias said. "If we're going to be in the path of this thing anyway, we might as well stand for something." Silence spread across the screens. Then slowly a signal appeared. A small, distant species, barely known, sent a simple message. "We will share our records," another followed. "So will we." Then another, and another. On the bridge of the sanctuary, human operators stared at their displays as data streams began to pour in. Languages, images, music, maps, family records, history. Elias felt his eyes burn. Kathira's glow brightened. "You have changed the question," she said softly. "It is no longer who will survive, it is who will be remembered." A new voice spoke, old, deep. "Human," said the stone being, "if you fail, all of this will be lost with you." Elias nodded. "We know," he said. "We've been carrying the weight of losing our own world for a long time. What's a few hundred more?" Some of the screens dimmed. Some went dark. Not everyone agreed, but enough stayed. The meeting ended slowly, one signal at a time. When the hall finally grew quiet, Elias sank into a nearby chair. Kathira sat beside him. You just made humanity the center of something very big, she said. Elias let out a tired laugh. Figures, he said. We finally get important when we're almost gone. She tilted her head. Your species has an odd sense of timing. On the bridge, alarms chimed softly, not warnings, notices. The first refugee ships were already changing course. They were coming. Elias stood and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was not running away from him anymore. It was running toward him, and humanity, small and tired and stubborn as ever, was getting ready to catch it. The sanctuary no longer felt like a quiet ship drifting through empty space. It felt like a small, moving world. Every corridor was filled with voices, sounds, and lights from species Elias had never seen before. Tall beings with long arms and soft skin walked beside small, round creatures that floated in the air like balloons. Machines moved carefully between them, carrying crates of data cores and power cells. The air itself seemed alive with motion. Human crew members did their best to guide everyone, even though most of them were just as amazed as the visitors. Elias stood on an upper walkway and watched it all. They're really coming, he said softly. Kathira stood beside him, her glow bright with quiet energy. You opened a door, she said, and the galaxy walked through it. Refugee ships had arrived in waves. Some were large, filled with entire communities. Others were small, carrying only a few beings and whatever memories they could save. They brought stories instead of weapons, records instead of armies. Human engineers worked day and night, building new data halls deep inside the sanctuary. The ship was never meant to hold this much information, this many lives, this much history. But humans had always been good at making things work when they weren't supposed to. Elias walked down into one of the new memory chambers. The room was wide and round, its walls covered in glowing panels. Each panel held the history of a species. Images, voices, songs, maps of worlds that might already be gone. A group of small, insect-like beings stood near one wall. They held hands as they watched a recording of their homeworld's sky. A human technician knelt nearby, helping them adjust the playback speed. Elias felt a tight feeling in his chest. He turned to Kathira. We're not just saving data, he said. We're holding people's pasts. She nodded. That is heavier than any weapon. The warning about the cosmic threat grew clearer each day. Long-range sensors showed empty space where stars had once been. Signals from entire systems went silent. Ships sent to investigate never returned. The thing moving through the galaxy did not destroy in a way humans understood. It erased. No debris, no ruins, just nothing. Some refugees panicked when they learned how close it was. Others grew calm. If this was the end, they wanted to be remembered. On the bridge, Elias stood with his officers watching the latest star map. A red shadow moved slowly across the display. That's the edge of it, one officer said. 2 weeks at our current position. Elias nodded. Kathira watched the map with him. You could still move, she said. There is time to run. Elias shook his head. If we move, he said, the refugees lose their anchor, their memories scatter, their stories fade into empty space. He looked at her. We stay. She studied him for a long moment. Then I stay too, she said. Word spread quickly. Some alien groups chose to leave, unable to face what was coming. Their ships pulled away from the sanctuary, disappearing into the dark, but many stayed. They helped humans build more memory halls. They shared energy systems. They taught humans new ways to store information, not just in machines, but in living minds. One species offered something strange and beautiful. They could carry memories inside themselves, passing them from one generation to the next as living stories. They joined the humans, becoming walking libraries. Children of the sanctuary grew up hearing stories from 100 worlds. They learned songs that were sung under alien suns. They learned names of places that might no longer exist. Elias often walked through the halls just to listen. One day, he stopped in a quiet corner where a young human girl sat beside a tall, four-eyed alien. The alien was telling her about an ocean made of light. Did it really glow? The girl asked. Yes, the alien replied. At night, the waves looked like the stars had fallen into the water. Elias smiled and kept walking. This was why they stayed. Kathira found him later in the old observation room at the front of the ship. The glass showed a wide view of the stars, calm and distant. You look tired, she said. I am, Elias admitted. But I've never felt more awake. She stood beside him. The council is watching, she said. Some are afraid, some are ashamed, some are quietly sending more records. Elias nodded. Good, she tilted her head. You don't ask them to send ships or fleets, only memories. Elias looked out at the stars. Fleets fight, he said. Memories last. The days passed quickly. The red shadow on the star map grew larger. The memory halls filled to their limits. The sanctuary hummed with more energy than it ever had in its long life. Engineers warned that systems were under strain. Elias called a meeting with the human crew and alien leaders. We can't keep everything in one place, he said. If this ship goes, everything goes with it. Kathira stepped forward. Then we do what humans do best, she said. Which is? One of the leaders asked. Elias smiled. We share. They began building memory beacons, small, simple machines that could be launched into space. Each one carried a piece of the collected history. They sent them in every direction, slow and steady, like seeds in the dark. Some refugees cried as they watched the beacons leave. Some felt relief. No matter what happened, parts of them would drift on. The cosmic threat drew closer. Strange signals began to reach the ship, sounds that didn't match any known pattern. Lights that flickered at the edge of sensors and vanished when focused on. The air on the sanctuary felt heavy. Elias stood on the bridge as a warning tone sounded. It's here, an officer said quietly. The star map changed. One by one, nearby systems went dark. Kathira's glow dimmed. Do you regret it? She asked Elias. He thought about the bed in his cabin, the empty space, the choice he had made. He shook his head. No, he said. For the first time, the galaxy didn't look at us as a mistake. It looked at us as a home. The ship trembled slightly as a wave of strange energy passed nearby. Not an impact, more like a shadow moving through light. Some refugees cried out. Human crew members held their stations. The memory halls glowed brighter as systems shifted into emergency mode. Elias felt a deep, quiet fear in his chest, but also something else, pride. They had turned the last ship of a fading species into a place the galaxy ran toward, not away from. Kathira placed a hand on his arm. Whatever happens, she said, humanity will not be forgotten. Elias looked at the beacons on the screen, tiny points of light drifting into the endless dark. Then we've already won, he said. Outside, the stars faded one by one. Inside, the stories burned brighter than ever. The sanctuary floated in a sea of fading light. Where stars once burned bright, now there were only empty spaces like holes in the sky. The cosmic shadow moved slowly, silently across the universe. It did not roar, it did not strike, it simply erased. Inside the ship, the memory halls glowed like a small sun. Elias stood on the bridge, his hands resting on the edge of the main console. The screens showed long lines of data moving outward, flowing into the memory beacons that drifted away in every direction. Each beacon carried stories, songs, faces, and names. Pieces of hundreds of worlds. Kathira stood beside him, her light soft but steady. It is almost here, she said. Elias nodded. I know. The ship trembled gently as strange energy brushed against its outer systems. Not enough to cause damage, but enough to remind everyone how close the end was. Throughout the sanctuary, beings gathered in small groups. Some held hands. Some sat quietly, watching old recordings of their homeworlds. Some told stories to children who would never see the skies their parents once knew. In one memory hall, a group of humans and aliens worked side by side, guiding the last streams of data into the beacon launch system. Beacon 37 is ready, a human engineer called out. Launching, replied a small floating being, its voice soft and bright. Another point of light drifted into the dark. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the old Earth recordings, trees moving in the wind, waves crashing against stone. Birds flying across a blue sky. He had never seen those things in real life, but he felt like they were part of him anyway. He opened his eyes and looked at Kathira. Thank you, he said. For what? She asked. For staying, Elias replied. You could have left. Your people could have saved themselves. Kathira's light shifted into a warm gold. My people believe trust is the strongest thing in the universe, she said. You showed us what that really means. A warning tone sounded on the bridge. Outer systems are fading, an officer said. We are losing contact with the far beacons. Elias nodded. Keep sending data, he said. As long as we can. The cosmic shadow reached the edge of the sanctuary's sensor range. The stars ahead vanished like blown-out candles. A deep silence filled the ship, not from lack of sound, but from something heavier. The feeling that the universe itself was holding its breath. In the observation room, children from different species sat together, watching the darkness through the wide glass window. "Is it scary?" one small human boy asked. A tall alien beside him thought for a moment. "Yes," it said gently, "but it is also quiet. Sometimes quiet is where stories live." The boy nodded, even if he didn't fully understand. Back on the bridge, the first system failure alarms began to sound. "Power grid weakening," an officer said. "Memory hall's still stable," another replied. Elias looked at the screens. "Then we're doing our job," he said. The cosmic shadow touched the edge of the ship. It was not a physical thing. There was no impact, no heat, no sound. The light around the sanctuary dimmed, like someone slowly turning down the brightness of the universe. Elias felt a strange pressure in his chest, like the world was gently pushing against him. Kathira steadied herself, her glow flickering for the first time. "Elias," she said softly. He looked at her. "I'm here," he replied. The memory halls flared brighter, drawing power from every remaining system. The ship's engines shut down, the lights in the corridors dimmed. Everything the sanctuary had was being poured into one final act. Remembering, the beacons launched faster now, pushed out in a last wave of light. Elias watched them go. "Goodbye," he whispered. Across the ship, beings felt something pass through them, not pain, not fear. Connection, the memories stored in the halls, did something unexpected. They did not stay locked inside machines. They spread. The living memory carriers began to glow, their bodies lighting up as stories moved through them. Humans felt images in their minds that were not their own. Alien children suddenly knew the sound of human laughter, the smell of rain on metal decks, the feeling of looking at a sky you might never touch. The cosmic shadow slowed. For the first time, it did not erase. It hesitated. The thing that moved through the galaxy had never faced something like this. It was made to remove, to clean, to turn complex living history into simple nothing. But the sanctuary was no longer just a ship. It was a web of shared memory, woven through living minds and drifting beacons and distant signals. You could not erase something that existed everywhere at once. The darkness pressed closer. The ship groaned as systems failed one by one. "Main power is gone," an officer said quietly. "Memory network still active," another replied. Elias smiled. "That's enough," he said. The lights on the bridge faded, leaving only the soft glow from Kathira's skin and the distant shine of the last beacons on the screen. The cosmic shadow passed through the sanctuary. The ship vanished. There was no explosion, no wreckage, just empty space. But the beacons kept moving. Across the galaxy, far from where the ship once was, signals reached distant systems. On a water world, a young alien heard a human song for the first time and felt tears in eyes that had never cried before. On a desert planet, a small colony received a story about oceans made of light and shared it around a fire. On a massive space station, leaders paused their arguments to listen to the quiet voice of a human child describing stars. The galaxy did not forget. The cosmic shadow moved on, slower now, its path changed. Where it passed, memories followed behind it, filling the empty space with echoes of what had been. Years later, in a calm region of space, a great structure floated between the stars. It was simple, a platform of dark metal shaped like a bed, large enough for any species. One side was smooth and open, always empty. Ships from many worlds visited it. Some left small memory crystals. Some told stories aloud. Some just sat in silence and looked at the stars. An inscription was carved into the metal in hundreds of languages, but the meaning was the same in all of them. Here stands the place where humanity made space, not for power, not for survival, but for everyone. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different forms and voices, the story of the small, stubborn species that refused to let the universe be alone was still being told.